Beyond 3D.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Saturday night. Welcome to this week's edition of Beyond 3D. Matt and Clint here with you. Hopefully everyone is doing quite well out there and enjoying wherever you may be, because we're enjoying it here. Clint, how are you this week?
Good evening, Matthew. Matthew.
Yes.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. Good. How's your week been?
Busy as usual, just like yourself. And, fruitful, looking into things, doing some research, trying to come up with ways to do things that are a little bit different and unique.
I have a Dr. Stephen Greer talk that I'd like to present tonight.
Excellent.
And when I say I'd like to present, I mean, I'll play it for our listeners. It's
yes,
pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got there?
Oh, no, I was doing a little bit of research this week. And what I usually do is I get on a jag or so, and this week's jag is all about energy and spiritual centers on the earth.
Yes. Okay.
So we'll get into that a little bit as well.
Can you give me a clue?
Yes, I can. Here's the clue. One of them, at least. Where is Jesus Christ buried?
Ooh. I had this conversation once with somebody, and the final resting place in this conversation came around to be somewhere in Japan.
Bingo.
You just pointed at me.
Bingo.
Was I right?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Kirisutu no Haka.
That was a long shot.
In Honshu, North Island, the northern bit of Honshu Island, the main island of Japan.
You know, I can't believe I actually got that.
In Shingo Village, yes. So that was very interesting. And there's a couple of different sources that I've looked up about that. Now, I first heard about this in a book called The Jehovah Prophecy. And they talked about the fact that what we would call Jesus Christ was in fact of alien origin.
Now, as you say that, I'm just looking it up now. I'm still dazzled that I was able to pull that out of nowhere. You didn't expect me to say that,
No,
did
I didn't.
You?
I was just, okay,
I'm sorry, I just stole your thunder.
It doesn't matter. That's fine.
I've just looked this up now as you're talking about it, and the first thing that comes up is the Smithsonian.
Well, a little bit of background story. According to some people, what we would call Jesus Christ was actually of alien origin. And this is where you have to get esoteric. The body that we know as Christ's body was just a spacesuit, for lack of a better term.
As is all of ours.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned that, and I wished I had written it down. Probably about a week and a half ago, I saw a talk about Jesus as a shapeshifter who could alter his body, and this person pulled out all these passages out of the Bible that mentioned Jesus constantly changing his appearance.
Okay, yeah.
So you say that, and I'm just bringing that up to complement what you're talking about.
Well, I believe when we were talking to Stan Deo a while back, he was mentioning something about people get into the Da Vinci codes and Mary Magdalene and the whole bit that way, and all of a sudden Christ and the family left and went to the European continent. But according to other books, alien origin, and what happened was when they talk about the missing years from age about 12 to 33 in the Bible with Jesus Christ.
That was Schoolie's week.
Yeah, basically a long one. But he didn't go to Queensland. What actually happened there, depending on which story you listen to, he actually left and went to Japan through Siberia and studied spiritualism there till the age of 21, left and went back to Judea.
What age would he have been when he got to Judea?
You know, that's a very interesting topic, but what it also states is that it was not Jesus that was crucified on the cross. It was some other relative.
This is coming from the information that you've researched.
Been researched this week.
Okay. Which is not necessarily...
Well, Stan Deo mentioned the fact that when Christ was crucified, it wasn't Christ, it was someone who took his place, and he actually went back east and was in the desert for a while, but nowhere near Golgotha, where he was supposedly crucified.
Golgotha.
Yeah.
Golgotha Rock.
Yeah. So now, according to the story I have been looking into, he actually went east across Siberia back into Japan, where he settled on Honshu Island in northern Japan, well, the north end of Honshu Island, and lived a quite common farming type of existence and died at age 106.
You'd have to learn the language.
Oh, it's not too hard.
No.
I mean, quite frankly. And you can go there to the little town of Shingo Village, and you can actually go to the cemetery and see the cross there where Christ is allegedly buried. And there are also smaller crosses in the cemetery that contain relics of hair samples from Mary, Mother Mary, etc., etc. So I thought that was quite interesting that depending on who you talk to, Jesus Christ did not die, or I've heard so many different stories about what happened, then it's a matter of which one do you believe. But the other part of this story was there was documentation that was also found written in Hebrew, and it was found in Japan, in this small village, but it was confiscated by government. And
is this where I come back to the Smithsonian?
I don't know anything about the Smithsonian, but they could have had something to do with it. It was basically confiscated by the Japanese government in the 1930s and went to Tokyo, but being that the war came up after that, it had not been seen since.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was acquired.
Could be acquired, I would think so.
During World War II.
Yeah, so it's an interesting little way of looking at a very old allegory and trying to see what is actually going on. I would throw out another theory. If you're an alien and you just said something, now you said something a little earlier, so I'll throw out this theory to you. Let's see what you think of it. Shapeshifter. Mm-hmm. What about a person that can biolocate? If you have that kind of power, it doesn't have to be shape-shifting. You can biolocate, so you can be in 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 places at once. We can be seen at the studios on Wilson Road. We can also be seen down in Portsea. We can also be seen in Tokyo, near Shinjuku. We can also be seen in New York City. If you are that powerful, why not? Thinking.
I am thinking, and if I could do that, I know I'd get in a punch on with myself, because who's going to go to work?
Well, maybe.
Who's drawing the short straw to go to work while the other one's sitting on the banana lounge around the pool?
Well, fair enough. So you'd go yell at that guy, why am I working and not you? But here's the other thing, not just with Jesus Christ, the biolocation is well known throughout Indian texts. Mm-hmm. It is Krishna with the gopis, 164 gopis, and he was supposedly with all of them at the same time, therefore can cut yourself into a whole lot of different pieces.
Dr. Manhattan did it in Watchmen. He was able to biolocate himself into 4 or 5 or 6 or 20 different...
Yeah, and what about holograms? The fact that you can shatter a hologram and the whole will be contained in each piece.
Yeah, that's... Okay, we're mind-blowing. You're mind-blowing me tonight. It's a Saturday night. You're mind-blowing me.
So that was one of the things that I was looking up, but it's energy centers, spiritual centers around the world. So not just Jerusalem, the holy city, but there are energy centers in Japan, all over Japan, and there are many of the so-called spiritual adepts that we know through our history. The stories change depending on where you go, so it's quite interesting.
The Japanese are mostly Buddhists and Shinto, aren't they? So when did Christianity come into Japan? Don't say when Jesus walked in.
I don't know, to be perfectly honest with you. I would not.
You bring these questions to the table, and I bring you more questions to your questions.
Well, then I'd have to go do a little bit more research. There is a small, and I mean minute, pocket of Christianity, because more than likely, from the United States at least, being that from a business standpoint, Ford did a lot of work with Japanese companies after the war insofar as the way to run businesses, manufacturing, etc., and they just took it to a whole new art form. I would more than likely think that missionaries also went over there from churches like Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, and things like that. They would always send people out to do missionary work, and therefore I would think that there would have been some kind of Christian dogma going on after World War II in Japan. That wouldn't surprise me. Quite frankly, I'd have to do a little bit more research to find out, because I'm not quite sure.
16th century.
16th century.
1549, Christianity wandered into Japan.
Does it bother to say who was the wandering person that brought it?
A Jesuit missionary called Francis Xavier.
Francis Xavier?
Arrived in Japan in 1549 and introduced the Christian religion to a Japan that already had a national religion.
How long did he last? Who knows? You have to be careful when you start doing that kind of thing. You can it can lead to your early demise if you're not quite careful. Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Which is probably why Jesus lived allegedly to what did you say?
106.
6. He probably kept his mouth shut.
Well, I think you would if you went through all of that in one place.
Well, if you saw what happened back at Golgotha Rock,
yeah,
you're not going to want to go for round 2.
No.
When you settle in a new place.
Exactly. Not even close.
Just eat your rice, Jesus. And shh.
So it was very interesting looking that up and seeing exactly what was going on with that. There are a few others.
Why did you just lean across and point at me then?
What?
I don't know. You just went, ooh, like that.
I'd have to think about that. Don't know. Went out of my head.
I mentioned the word Golgotha Rock.
Yes.
And you went, ooh, that reminds me.
No, it doesn't. Okay. It's not there. It's definitely not there.
Maybe another was.
Yeah, it might not have been. Energy centers. Another one for you.
Pause. We're going to have a break.
Do we have to?
Yep, absolutely.
Fair enough.
Beyond.
3. We are back.
We are back. Welcome back this week to another edition of Beyond 3D.
Yeah, Clint, we energy centers I've been talking about this week. What I wanted to go over was a few more of them. Everybody would have heard of this one, Sedona in Arizona.
Yes.
A very powerful center, energy center. Energy centers being a point where a lot of energy can enter into the earth, or the earth can project a lot of energy from an energy vortex underneath a certain spot. It's tied into a few other places around the world when it comes to energy centers. So we have, naturally, the pyramids in Egypt is considered an energy center per se. Mm-hmm. Machu Picchu. Yeah, down in Peru. Stonehenge. Bali, certain areas of Bali, and the fact that a lot of the Balinese are very much into religious, at least the Eastern or Hindu religion aspect of things down that way. And another one local.
I would have said Uluru.
As I just said, another one local. So you're on a roll, which would be both Uluru and Kata, Tjuta.
Everything's coming up Clint tonight.
And that's it. There you go. So
I've been to Kata, Tjuta. I was actually thinking about that today.
Okay. I was there at least 15 years ago.
Did you climb
I
rock?
refused to climb the rock because the Aboriginal elders said that you're not supposed to. So what I did was what they call pradakshina. So I did the 10K walk around it.
I did the 10K walk too, but I had the opportunity to climb it and I chose not to, just out of respect.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't know there is a permanent mica unit in an ambulance that's stationed at the base of the rock just below where the walking trail begins, because X amount of people slip and die and fall and hurt themselves all the time.
Not surprising. Anyway, when I was there at least, and you might have found the same thing, very powerful spot. But to me, looking off way to the right, to Kata, Tjuta, the Olgas as they were called before.
I found them more enjoyable.
Much more enjoyable, much more powerful. And there's a walk that you can do there up to the Valley of the Winds.
Is that the waterfall?
It wasn't a waterfall. We took off and just kept on walking, and our guide said, well, we can stop here or you can keep on going. It's another 3K.
Okay.
And you head up into the Olgas and you come to this point called the Valley of the Winds where you can look out and you can it's just an absolutely beautiful expanse, and the energy is just something amazing to behold. The ground would remind one of being on Mars insofar as that red kind of clay soil.
Yep.
Absolutely wonderful. And now we were there, it was probably about 38 degrees on the Celsius scale, guys. So it was quite warm. And a bucket load of flies, to the point where after a while you didn't even bother to brush them away. You just said, oh well, whatever. And you just kept on doing what you had to do as long as they weren't in your eyes or your ears. But it was just an absolutely stunning place to spend time, and from an energetic standpoint is just absolutely phenomenal.
And if anyone's contemplating going to visit Ayres Rock soon, choose to go to the Olgas instead.
Yeah.
I think you get way more out of with value and what it has to offer and energy-wise. I think it's just an awesome place.
From a spiritual standpoint, guys, if you're going to the area, yeah, you can stay in Yalara, the town there, but go, and you can do both. But if you only have to choose one, in my opinion, Uluru is what I would consider the blind, and the energy center is in Kata Tjuta.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's the way you would do it when you come down here, and it is an absolute must-see as far as we're concerned.
Easter Island?
Yes. Now, maybe you can help me out with Easter Island.
Go on.
Okay, off the coast of Ecuador. Mm-hmm. Now, the heads are there, but they've been digging, and they have found it's not just heads. It's the whole body. How big are they?
Half their size doubled.
Interesting.
I couldn't tell you, to be honest. I couldn't tell you.
They're giant.
They're tons. They weigh tons, though. I know they weigh tons.
Yeah, so that's another very energetic place. Now, energy-wise as well, I mean, we mentioned Machu Picchu, we mentioned Bali, Stonehenge, etc. We're close. Being that we're in Australia, you have to mention Kata Tjuta and Uluru. You'd be remiss if you did not mention India.
Pick a place.
In India?
Yeah. Pick one.
Dyaneshwar Maharaja's Samadhi Shrine in Alundi, which is in the Maharashtra state, a little bit away from Mumbai or Bombay.
And why did you choose this place?
I chose this place because when I was doing all my spiritual work, I read Dyaneshwari, all the text from Dyaneshwar Maharaj, which was a young saint who took what is called living samadhi. As in, he basically left his body and merged with the Godhead, but the body was still alive. And to this day, going into that shrine, if you're lucky and you know somebody, you can actually stick your hand down into the hole in the ground where the body is, and you can feel the pulsations of energy that are still to this day coming from that space.
Why am I not seeing this in mainstream news? Why is this not?
Why would mainstream news want to give anybody information that could actually help them spiritually evolve?
Thank you for answering the question that I already knew the answer to. Yes, I just wanted you to say
but that's literally what it comes down to. There are spaces and places that you can go, and I'm talking, there are temples in India you can go to where you don't have to think about meditation. It is instantaneous. You sit down in a relaxed pose, and before you know it, an hour has gone by and you don't know where it's gone because it sounded like you just counted down from 10. And it's that quick. These are the spaces that are out there. The reason being, and especially in a place like India, is because when you see a temple today there, and you go back hundreds, if not thousands of years, temple was there, it was raised, somebody else put up a temple. That was raised, another temple was put up there. The energy has been building up over the centuries. And so when we walk in today, bam, instantaneous meditation, you can feel the energy of the place.
What about Peak Kailash in Tibet?
Don't know a lot about Tibet,
okay,
but I have a quick story about Tibet that I can tell you.
Go for it.
A lot of people talk about the Dalai Lama and the fact that he had to leave that area and go to Dar es Salaam in India. You have to ask yourself the question, why? What you were told by people like Richard Gere and people who support the Dalai Lama is the fact that the Chinese came in, took over the place, and they had to flee. Fair enough. Why did this happen? We're talking universal energy, and when we talk universal energy, we are talking about a situation where, yes, we may live a 100-year lifespan, but the universe is a whole lot older, and it does things in its own way. With Tibet, what you have to do is you have to go back 1,500 to 2,000 years, where what was going on then was they were roaming nomadic mongrel hordes that were raiding into China, killing the farmers, taking over the fields, raping, robbing, and pillaging. From the standpoint of spirituality and karma, what comes around goes around, what goes around comes around. All of a sudden, all of these raiding mongrel hordes are reborn as priests, as monks in Tibet. All of those poor farmers that were raped, robbed, pillaged, murdered, decapitated, garroted, what have you, are reborn as what? Chinese soldiers. the Chinese soldiers go back into Tibet and do to those monks what was exactly done to them all those hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. What goes around comes around. So when I look at Tibet, I look at, karma doing its thing.
You know what I've got to say about that?
What?
An eye for an eye leaves everybody blind.
Yes, but we're not talking about an eye for an eye necessarily. We are talking about a person learning a lesson karmically. And if you don't learn it this lifetime from the standpoint of karma, you can learn it the next
Are
lifetime.
we about to get into an argument? Do you actually need to learn a lesson through violence?
It's not about the violence. It's the way sometimes it works out. There are certain things that you can't clear. There are certain things that you have to learn a lesson a certain way.
Okay.
This is all also about spiritual growth. This is all about, these people might have been, we might consider them spiritually kindergarteners, very, very young. As you learn your lessons and you get older and older and older, you don't need to necessarily go through the lesson. What can happen is you can learn by example. You can watch other people and you can bless them and say, oh, thank you for the lesson.
I do that. I do that all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we do that now because we've done the work in the past, and we've gotten to the point where we can say, "Hey, wait a minute, boom, let's not go there," because we do not want to take on any new karmas. We want to be able to continue forward per se. Therefore, that's the way it goes, and that's the way they had to learn that lesson.
Time to have a break.
No problem.
Beyond.
3. Welcome back to Beyond 3D this week, guys. Matt and Clint here, still with you, still hanging in there, still exploring and waxing philosophic about spiritual centers, energy centers in and around this plane we call Earth. And so, Clint, how about a little bit of Stonehenge?
Oh, why did we not discuss that one first?
I don't know. Because I got on a tangent about Jesus Christ's tomb being in Japan.
No, well, does anybody actually know at this point what Stonehenge is? I've heard everything from a calendar
right
to a ley line marker. Do you have anything else about Stonehenge?
I honestly don't. I know it's a pain in the butt when President Obama goes there and you want to get in and all of a sudden they block the whole thing off.
Did that actually happen to
Yes.
you? Right. Nice. Thanks, Barry.
But outside of that, no, quite frankly. It's there. Energetically, I did not feel it to be as powerful as Kata Tjuta.
I know some people that have visited Stonehenge, and a couple.
Yeah.
He stepped over the line to step into actual Stonehenge itself. Felt nothing. His partner, she stepped across the line and was struck with this almighty force where she could feel the ley line energy passing through.
Okay.
Look at you pulling your face.
No, I'm doing that because when you tell me something like that, what it means to me is this, that everybody is
Oh, you're just going to be
working
open.
evolutionary, from an evolutionary standpoint, spiritual evolution, people are along at different levels. So for this one person to feel it and for another person not to feel it, that's just that could be just the spiritual path bringing a person along. It might be, and this is normally what you would think is, well, what I would think is you would say, well, the person who felt it is more spiritually advanced, but that might not be the case. It could be a case where the person who felt that energy needed to feel that energy to advance, and the other person might not resonate with that frequency anymore because they've gone beyond it. Is a possibility.
I'm listening. I'm just absorbing what you're sharing.
That, to me, I think it's a pertinent point. Some people will go into an area, it doesn't have to be Stonehenge, it could be any energy center, and they say, well, they don't feel anything. If you don't feel the energy in a place, that energy might not be powerful enough for your aura, for your spiritual centers to pick up that frequency. It does not mean that you don't resonate with that frequency, it just means that you might be well beyond it. A friend of ours has told a story about the fact that the same thing can happen with psychotropics.
Oh, hello.
It can affect people.
Hello.
Yeah, it can affect people in a certain way, but as you do more meditations, as your energy body refines itself, you go back to do another psychotropic and it has no effect on you whatsoever anymore. You've gone beyond it.
I'll tell you what I know about psychotropics. The more you use them, the more control you have over your own brain. if you can get yourself into that point of self-awareness, where you are self-aware that it's happening, if you can constantly keep yourself aware that what's going on and that you're okay, you don't let it take you away too much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some people dabble. I definitely don't. Some people dabble, and some people get totally lost, and it destroys lives. Some people dabble and unlock the entire secrets to the universe.
I was listening to an interview with Terence McKenna,
who was heavily into psychotropics, especially with mushrooms. And somebody asked him to ask the mushrooms next time he was having a psychotropic journey, what is the solution to the growing world population? And he asked the mushrooms that question, and the response that came back was, Western society should only have one child. It's not the third world countries that are chewing through the resources with their iPods and their downloads and their computers and the TVs. It's Western culture that's using up all the resources. So the fungi, Terence said, Western society should only have one child, a one-child policy, whereas third world countries, they're not the ones, they're just getting by with minimal footprint on the planet.
Well, it's interesting. The one country that did have the one-child policy was
he
China.
came to that on psychotropics.
Well, the thing is, if you can, as you just said, if it's controllable, and then not just controllable, but repeatable. So when you do something like that, if you could be aware enough to see how it affects the brain, where it affects the brain, take the energy that you are feeling at that time, and there's a technique that you can use where you can actually think of what you're exactly feeling and energetically place it in your third eye. And you tap on the third eye or the Ajna chakra and embed that code into the Ajna chakra in between the two eyes, and that gets into the pituitary, the master gland, and that way the body can remember how to do it without having to take the catalyst anymore, because that mushroom is the catalyst that opens the brain to that thought process. And if you can get that code to the point where you can open the brain to that process without that catalyst anymore, you can really start to
access the other 90%.
Yeah, that's the whole point. And it really is interesting because, as I said earlier, the one-child policy was followed by China. But the other thing I heard with Earth population is the fact that a lot of people are going into population control. So you have Margaret Sanger, the lovely little witch, I'm trying to be kind, who came up with Planned Parenthood.
Excuse me.
You know, Hitler's love child. You also have Bill Gates and his dad were into that with their vaccines, and they were into Planned Parenthood as well.
I'm not even going to use the word alleged. Just Google Bill Gates and vaccines in Africa.
Yeah, it's insane.
He wiped out.
It is insane.
Sorry, I'll take that back. His vaccines wiped out thousands of children.
Absolutely. And so what was being done was a lot of these so-called elitists have a lot of information, and I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but you will find that the Dalai Lama and everything that he is preaching and teaching, behind the Dalai Lama, just like behind parts of the Catholic Church back in the 30s and the 40s, was a party in Germany that was called the National Socialist Party. Nazis. They were heavily into esoteric teachings.
They were massive.
Beyond description.
And occult too.
Absolutely. And so you get a situation where...
And can I just say, Spielberg alluded to that in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, without a question. And he was pretty well straight on the mark with a lot of that stuff. Now, the fact of the matter is, when you get and you start to research this and look into it, you're going to find that a lot of the elitists and those that wanted to truly control this planet found out a very little interesting tidbit of information. And the information they found out was that if 9 billion people populate the Earth, there is enough soul force to raise the Earth a full dimension. They are trying to stop that from happening.
Listeners, I am here tonight. I'm just... every time Matt drops something like that, I usually sit there and yeah, I get lost in it.
So that's what the problem is right now, and a lot of people know it, and they are trying their best to keep the population below that number, if not try to negate it, because you've heard about this, Clint, that they want to wipe out 90% of the Earth's population anyway. They want to totally remove themselves from even getting close to 9 billion, because that's it. They're over if that happens.
Yep, absolutely.
Can't refute that. So that's what was going on with that. So it's a very interesting study in general terms. I just love that stuff.
We have to stop for another break.
Okay.
Beyond 3. D.
Welcome back this Saturday night to another edition of Beyond 3D.
Indeed.
Now, hit me with some more info there, Matt. You're a fount of knowledge tonight.
Once you get on start looking into this stuff, it just goes on and on and on and on.
Give me one more.
Really get esoteric. Okay.
Give me one more.
Being that my wife Rose has been there and I've been there a long time ago, we have to talk a little bit about...
My talk tonight with Stephen Greer might have something to do with this.
Okay.
Go on. What is it?
Mount Shasta, Northern California.
Yep. Top weight.
Yeah. Now... just when you get into the area of Mount Shasta, when you go up that way toward Redding, California, and head up north, you start to, if you notice the difference. Like when we're in Melbourne as a city, very congested. Think of the Monash Freeway trying to get the heck out of there, and you know how bad it is.
Let's not.
Okay, let's not. But as you get to the peninsula where we live, it totally opens up. The air is different.
The unicorns come out. The rainbows come out.
Exactly. A little echidnas around the... anyway. You get those kind of things running around. So
it's
what
just
happens?
It's just a more chilled way.
Yes, and
living.
it's a nice energy wave that comes through. The same thing in Mount Shasta.
Okay.
And
that's a
snow-covered peak.
Snow-covered peak.
Quite tall. Mm-hmm. And what happens is...
White Mountain.
Yeah. What happens is a lot of people believe it to be not just a spiritual energy center, but a center where an ancient race of beings still lives.
In the mount?
In and under.
In and under.
And under the mount.
Okay.
UFOs, UAPs have been seen in the area above it.
Frequently.
Yeah.
Frequently.
There have been people that have wandered through the areas and have come across interesting, very tall beings, very pale in complexion with long, grayish but not gray hair, walking around light blue eyes that were giving them information and swearing them to secrecy. All kinds of things like that were going on. And there is a belief that Lemuria has something to do with it, and the whole Lemurian race, and the fact that they still live in and under Mount Shasta is that's what's going on there. And so energetically you can feel the energy of the place, but a lot of people have gone there. A lot of spiritual retreats are done there.
It's also a Native American Indian.
But when you get into the Native American Indians, it would make sense that there's things living under the ground, and that we can get into this in another show. But a lot of the giants, when they talk about the giants with red hair that used to...
We did that about 2 months ago.
Yeah, they were in that area as well, okay, with the natives of the North American continent. But the Lumerians are supposed to be there and moving in and around there. They're supposed to be starting to reveal themselves more and more. And there are actually pictures, of which one I will put up on our Facebook page, that talk about the fact that there are actual doorways in and around the mountain that lead into those cavernous areas where the Lemurian cities are. And so I'll put a picture up and you guys can take it for whatever you think about it, but it's interesting to look at.
When you mentioned Mount Shasta, I thought you were actually going to talk about some kind of Stargate.
I'm not too sure about that. Nothing would surprise me. But quite frankly, there are people that just believe that it has entranceways that leads into an underground city. And what it reminds me of, not the negative aspect of it, but it reminds me of is one of my favorite TV shows, Babylon 5.
Hang on a sec.
Okay, look.
Hang on. Okay, so go for it. I'm just gonna...
Oh.
Just gonna lean back, put my feet up.
when I talk about this, it reminds me of my favorite sci-fi show, Babylon 5. And oh yeah,
It's time for Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong time. Hang on.
yes.
Go.
Anyway, in Babylon 5, we have a situation where you have two warring factions. We have a lot of warring factions, actually, but the two main so-called elder races are called the Vorlons and the Shadows. And the Vorlons are supposedly the ones that are loving, kind, believe in order and obedience. The Shadows believe in evolution through war and chaos. What I noticed when I talk about Mount Shasta and the fact that the Lemurian cities are within and underneath, the Shadows, not that Lemurians are evil, but the Shadows, when you found their world, their home world, which was called Zahadum, you would not just look at the surface of the planet. The surface of the planet actually looked a lot like Mars, but when you looked at certain areas, you would see these monoliths coming up with all these different symbols on them. The actual race of beings lived underground. And underground, they had these absolutely massive cities. Massive. With many different orders of beings there. Most of them nasty, because the Shadows were supposedly the ones that wanted chaos and everything like that. But if you think about it, they were trying to describe two sides of the same coin.
It sounds like a dichotomy, almost a yin-yang.
Yes. And the thing about it was, these two races, way back when, were actually friendly, and they actually were told that they had to watch over the younger races. Lumerians, if they're in Mount Shasta, are much more advanced than we are, and what they could be doing is observing the younger races here on this planet and ultimately trying to bring them along. So everybody has their own way of doing things.
Yeah, okay.
If you believe in order, chaos is the antithesis of that, and you do not want to have it. These two just took it to the point, at least in this sci-fi show, where they would go to war with each other over the way they thought about whether you should rule via order or whether you should rule with chaos. Both of them wanted the race to evolve. They just wanted to do it in different ways. And the end of the story basically comes down to the younger race decided that they didn't want to deal with either one of them. They would find their own way. And so the two races left. And they said, oh, we can leave and go and see all of our old friends again. And they just took off and left. Left a few time bombs behind them.
We're still talking about Babylon 5, aren't
Yes,
we?
we are.
Okay, sorry. I just got lost in Donkey Kong.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah,
Cool.
it's very nice, Donkey Kong. You got to be kidding. Anyway, so that's what I think of when I think of Mount Shasta. Energetically, it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful spot. The Lemurian city there called Telos is supposedly underneath it, alleged to be underneath the ground. There are entranceways into this city. People have put up photographs of these entranceways, and they look like these huge steel doors carved into the side of a mountain.
Let me see if I can find one while we're chitty-chatting.
Yeah, and what we'll do is we'll put one of them up, and you can take a look
Oh,
for yourself. We'll put it up on the Facebook page.
hang on a minute. Who's cobbled those man-made doors in front of those holes?
Well, that's the whole thing. Nobody knows what's really going on there.
That's not quite right.
Doesn't look right to me.
No, it doesn't look...
It looks really weird.
Let's put it on the Facebook page.
We'll put it up and people can make their own decisions about it.
Yeah, I don't even know how to describe that. What am I looking at? Two separate doors, but they're like very square.
Quite square.
Very square.
They are square indeed. Not rectangular, square. And
In stone.
in stone. And the person who took the photograph stated that the person that showed them this area was a rather tall individual that spoke with a British type of accent, swore them to secrecy, not to reveal where they were in Mount Shasta, where these two doors were, and they looked at each other, it was a father and a daughter, and said that they wouldn't reveal anything even though they took a picture, and they turned around and the person was no longer anywhere in the vicinity.
So they lied, because therefore you're telling the story.
Well, they're telling the story, so they lied. They didn't.
That's
They
right.
didn't keep their secret.
They didn't keep their secret.
Maybe they figured they only had a 10-year timeline or something like that, or maybe 5 years. They said, well, we'll keep it for 5 years, and then we're going to let people know what's going on here. But the fact of the matter is, the picture is up there. You can look at it, but they did not necessarily reveal where on the mountain, they were. Now, if they took the photograph with an iPhone or something like that,
You'd have
you'd be able to
geotagged.
figure out exactly where it was.
Yes.
So it all depends on what camera they use. But they say here they used a Sony DSC W200.
That's a piece of... Actually, I'm not going to say that.
Well, look, it's from 2008, so maybe back then it was a little bit better. Who knows? But if you didn't use... But I don't think there are any tags on that, so I think it'd be pretty safe. So anyway, it's interesting.
But them keeping that a secret, I mean, Mount Shasta's a pretty big place.
Oh, yeah.
Looking for those doors would be like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Yep.
Or canoeing down the Grand Canyon looking for entranceways in the side of cliff faces. Unless you knew what you were looking for.
Yep. You
or
would.
somebody
Yeah.
was taking you, you just pass it by.
You would. So literally, that's what it comes down to. So Lemurian civilizations, it could be folklore, might not be. People have had great experiences there, spiritual experiences there, internal experiences there, not just external and seeing things, but internally it's affected them. So, and if it's affected them in a positive way, that's all that matters. That's all that matters.
Beyond 3D.
Thank you for joining us tonight on Beyond the 3D.
Indeed, thank you.
Feel free to join our Facebook page,
Yep.
which is Beyond 3-D at Facebook, Matt.
Indeed. Abadably.
Yes, definitely. Stephen Greer.
Indeed.
There's a name we haven't spoken about for a while.
Oh, get this now, Clint.
Is this what you were going to tell me earlier?
No.
Go
it's
for
not.
it. Go
That's
for in
gone.
case
That's
you've-
long gone. That's long
Go
gone.
for it in
That's
case
long
you forget it again.
gone. Stephen Greer
Yes.
makes reports
Yes.
to new presidents coming in to the White House.
Yes.
So he's going to have to sit up there and talk to Alec Baldwin.
You're referring to the Saturday Night Live sketches.
Oh,
aren't
that
you?
is just so funny.
I have not seen a single one yet.
They
But
are
They come
funny.
up. They come up on my YouTube page, but I haven't chosen to watch them yet.
Funny.
Accurately funny
Accurately funny.
to the point where now when you watch Trump, are you watching
Yeah, you're
the
laughing.
idiosyncrasies that Alec Baldwin
Yeah,
does?
You're laughing.
Okay,
And you just can't stop cracking up. But he reported to Clinton, Obama, different presidents, so he might have to come up with a report to explain to Senor Trump
Oh, do you have to
what's going on as well.
just give him a colour-in book with a couple of crazy pictures in it? He might need one of his aides to help him. I don't know.
Ah, yes. We'll see. We will see. But anyway, what is Mr. Greer up to these days?
You know, this talk presentation I wish to share with everybody tonight. Mm-hmm. Anything I talk about, it's not going to do it justice.
Okay,
So let's just let it run.
fair enough.
Beyond 3D.
Someone asked, what can we, the American people, do to get Congress, the Senate, members of the armed forces, Vice President, and President to release all UFO, Area 51, and project information to the public and stop the secrecy that's been plaguing America all these years? Well, first of all, by supporting this project, you're doing that. Secondly, I think it's really important that, because with the social media now, that everyone posts to their friends, colleagues, neighbors, whoever in their Facebook and Twitter and social media network, this information that we're sending out, and find your voice to speak about it. I'm very skeptical that the U.S. Congress or the President, even if they held a hearing, that they would be allowed to have the testimony of the truth tellers be added. They would probably be a dog and pony show. It would sort of be a staged event, like all these committees have been. Now, I think it's important that they have a hearing, but I think people need to be prepared for the fact every time they've had one, it's been hijacked by the intelligence community and turned into a dog and pony show. So the reality of it is, we, the people, are going to have to do the disclosure, and then we hope as this takes momentum, there will be support coming from different governmental circles. But I think that the question betrays a certain assumption, and that is that the Congress and the President would have access to these unacknowledged special access projects, even if they had the courage and the intent to expose them. And what I have found since from 1993 until today is that most of the time, the people who are in key positions in the government and even key positions at the Pentagon who should have access to anything this sensitive do not. And when they try to get access, they're either completely turned aside or threatened. So the question becomes, how do you have the checks and balances required in a democracy? This gets to the whole concept of an ongoing campaign, which we've been engaged with for many, many years, to have whistleblowers come forward from the intelligence community, like this Air Force fellow and the others who have come forward, people who can get us documents, material, information that's credible, and put it in front of the public. The official capacity of people in the government, what's been interesting to me is that when you meet with these guys and women, I would say that with a rare exception, they know much less about this issue than any of you listening do. And if they try to get their staff to inquire, including the president, they're basically lied to. And this is also the case at people at the Pentagon that I've met with. I've met with generals and admirals at the Pentagon, very senior positions, who were not part of this cabal and secrecy, who, when they made inquiries, were flat out told nothing's going on, or were told, yes, there's an operation here, because I would give them a document with the project code name or code number on it, and they would say, but you don't have a need to know. This happened to Admiral Tom Wilson, who is the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It happened to the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is nearly as big as the CIA, but is the Pentagon's intelligence entity. It happened to many, many people I've met with in the Pentagon and in the Senate and House. So I think that people need to understand that even when there are good people who have tried to get to the bottom of this, and they're lied to, and in some cases they're threatened. So this means that it has to be the citizens of the country here and also overseas, those of you listening from the UK, Australia, Russia, need to find people who will come forward as legitimate, credible whistleblowers and step forward and do this. And I think that that is pretty much the only way this is going to happen. And with the alternative media we have now, the social media, YouTube, what have you, we have the ability to reach enormous numbers of people that were not reachable in the past. And so that's something everyone can do, and it's mainly networking. It's sort of like being an ambassador for this kind of disclosure effort in your own communities and in your own sphere, because I think if you begin to talk about this issue, and I do this all the time, I'll be flying on a plane and someone will say, oh, where are you going, what are you doing? I'll just tell them. And they'll go, well, that's interesting, I knew someone, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's all networking. So that kind of network building is something every single person on this phone call can do. So that's sort of one way of understanding this. Meanwhile, we can all hope that people who are in legitimate, or allegedly, I should say, legitimate power in the government will do the right thing at some point. But having witnessed this for 23 years, the foot dragging and the politicians, let's just say I'm not holding my breath. I think it's very important that we continue to do this as an independent, activist group of people.
Beyond, D.
Well, guys, Stephen Greer, interesting information as always, and say a prayer for him if he has to go and talk to the president-elect and explain what UFOs, UAPs, and the secret programs that are going on there.
I'd say a prayer, more so because I'd be expecting Trump to work out in his mind how he could make money off all that. No, I'm serious.
Oh, look, who knows?
The man's running multiple businesses while president.
Yes.
Don't tell me
Ultimately,
that's not a
that'll
conflict of interest.
It is, but, people do what they have to do. He will get chastised for it or not. I'm not going to even worry about it anymore. We'll see what happens in a year's time. Then I think people will be able to make a better determination about what's going on over there. Until then,
Hey, it's not the 19th of December yet.
no, it's not.
Anything could happen between now and then.
She's got a 2 million vote lead.
I know.
In the popular vote.
I saw that on Friday.
Yeah.
I saw that on Friday.
I know we said we wouldn't talk about this, folks, but what the hell. Anyway, she's got a 2 million vote lead. I honestly do not believe anyone in the Electoral College, or not too many, will go to the point where it would swing the vote around. That would cause anarchy.
Hang on a minute. Anarchy is exactly what your homeland needs to cleanse itself and set it back on course correction.
Well, we'll see what happens. I honestly don't know. We will see what happens. But guys, that is all we have time for this week on Beyond 3D. Thank you for listening in with us and enjoying the show with us. We enjoy presenting it to you. Definitely check out that Facebook page. The videos, pictures, and all that kind of stuff will be up that are pertinent to this week's show. We will catch you next week.
Good night, everybody.
Take care. We'll catch you again.
Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.